So my background, just so you know, I am a certified avalanche instructor from the American Avalanche Association. There are less than 100 people in the United States that are certified that hold the same certification that I do. Oh yes, have I ever been? Okay, yes, I have been caught in an avalanche. So I've been doing this for over 25 years. I've been teaching avalanche education. I've worked as snow safety director for the Winter Park Resort and for the Berthoud Pass ski area, where I was actually in charge of avalanche control and mitigation for the different resorts. So the key ingredient for an avalanche to happen is the slope has to be steep enough. And a steep enough slope is 30 degrees and above. And 30 degrees is a really important number. It's not always easy to figure out what is 30 degrees, but there's some tools out there for people that recreate in the backcountry, and it's called a slope meter or an inclinometer. And what it does is it tells you how steep the slope is. And if you simply stay off of slopes that are 30 degrees and more, then you can avoid avalanche terrain.
Okay.
And most avalanches happen on slopes that are 38 degrees. So if you took like the statistics of all the avalanches that have happened in Colorado, for instance, there would be more avalanches that happen on a 38 degree slope than any other pitch of a slope. So most of them start above tree line. They can happen in the trees, and there's some misconceptions about trees and avalanches, and I'll try and explain. But this is a pretty big topic. It's not as simple as we might like it to be.
Yeah.
But for instance, if the trees in an area are so thick that they would be absolutely no fun to ski through, that they'd be really hard to ski through, then an avalanche typically won't start in trees that are that thick. If it starts above the trees where there's what's called above tree line, it can run into those thick trees and wipe out trees. A big avalanche can move trees and make things, destroy buildings, cars, trees, all that kind of stuff. But if the trees are open enough that they're really fun to ski through, then it's not thick enough vegetation to prevent an avalanche from starting. The first time I got caught in an avalanche, I was doing avalanche control at the Berthoud Pass ski area on a slope called the Roll. And I was with two other partners, and we had placed explosives around the slope in about 6 different places, and absolutely nothing happened. And after you put explosives on the slope, explosives are used for testing. If the explosive goes off and nothing happens, then you start to get a feeling that maybe it's okay and nothing's going to happen. Then it was my turn, and I made a ski cut, and on my second ski cut, the whole bowl slid. So the whole area that we had been working on slid, and it carried me down the slope about 500 or 600 vertical feet and maybe a quarter of a mile. And it buried me up to my armpits. I was able to stay standing. I tried really hard to ski out of it, but I was not able, and it buried me up to my armpits.
Isn't that a little dangerous?
It is a little dangerous, but that's the job of a ski patroller or someone who does avalanche control work. That's what those guys, that's what we do when we're out there early morning using explosives, and we're trying to make sure that the slopes are safe for everybody else. So anyway, I got buried up to my armpits. My partners, of course, when it happened, they're watching me to see if, I'm going to get completely buried or disappear. And once they realized that I was unhurt and hadn't been completely buried, they thought it was good fun and funny. And it took a while to get me unburied because I still had my skis on. They didn't come off. So we had to dig all the way to where you could get my skis out of the snow. And it took about a half an hour to get me fully out of the snow. Ask away.
What do you do if you are in an avalanche?
So that's a great question. If you're caught in an avalanche, you want to do everything you can to get off of the moving snow and out of the avalanche. So what might happen, and hopefully you're with some partners and you're wearing all the proper safety equipment, an avalanche transceiver, a backpack with a shovel and a probe in it, and I can show you some of that stuff in just a second. But so if you're caught in an avalanche, your first and best option is to try and escape the moving snow. You want to get off of the moving snow. and you want to ski or ride downhill at about a 45-degree angle to the moving snow and try and get to where the snow's not moving. You keep trying that as long as you can and don't give up. If you get knocked over by the moving snow from behind you and you're faced downhill with your feet uphill, then you want to try and do everything within your power to get your feet back around below you. So you would dig in with your elbows or dig in with your arms or hands or grab any little rocks or trees that you were going by and try and stop your momentum. And when you do that, if you're able to get your feet back around you, underneath you again, sometimes that moving snow will help you stand up again. And if it does, then you want to try and escape again and ski or ride off to the side of the moving snow. You want to keep doing that until you've decided that there's no way I'm getting out of this and it's going to bury me or it's going to catch me. At that point, when you feel like you're going to get completely buried, if the snow is going to come around and completely bury you, you would want to take one arm in front of your face like this and one arm up in the air. And as you feel that snow start to slow down, you're going to take this arm and push away. And you want to make a little air pocket for yourself in front of your face. The other arm, you hope, gets above the snow. You may not even know which way is up or not, but if you have a hand out of the snow, then your partners can dig you out without having to do what's called a beacon search or a transceiver search. And it's much quicker and much safer if you're not completely buried. And the air pocket here is meant to, give you a space to breathe. And there's some other tools that you can use that will increase your safety in terms of being caught in an avalanche, and I can tell you about those too.
What percent do you have if you're caught in an avalanche?
So about 10 to 15% of all people that are caught in an avalanche are going to die if you're completely buried.
Yeah.
And then the amount of time that you're buried makes a big difference in your chances for survival, as does the depth of your burial. So in North America, no one has ever survived being buried deeper than 6 feet unless they were inside of a building or a car or something like that. And then as far as the time goes, if you're buried for 10 minutes or less, your odds of survival are, around 70%. If you're buried for 15 minutes, those odds go down to about 65 or 60%. If you're buried for a half an hour, your odds go down to 50%. And after a half an hour, your odds of survival go way, way down.
That's because of the oxygen.
Because you run out of air. Yes.
Okay.
So the couple tools that you can use or that people use, there's a tool called an Avalanche, and it's made by Black Diamond Equipment, and it is, I don't have one here, I'm sorry, but basically it looks kind of like a snorkel, so that when you breathe through it, you're not rebreathing that carbon dioxide, you're not suffocating yourself. If you don't have this device and you make that little air pocket, that warm breath against the snow creates a little ice lens or an ice shield that actually prevents the air from moving in and out, and you can suffocate very rapidly. The Avalanche has shown people surviving up to 45 minutes or an hour of burial time because it's pulling the air from a different spot away from where you would expel the carbon dioxide from breathing.
Wow.
So this backpack has what's called an airbag, and if you were caught in an avalanche, it has a big balloon that pops up out of it when you pull this ripcord thing, and it is supposed to help you from becoming buried.
Okay.
It keeps you up higher in the moving snow, and in Europe these are very popular and they're very well used and recognized, and in the United States they're becoming more and more used and more popular. The drawback is that they're very expensive.
Yeah.
This backpack is around $850.
Wow. Did you see that on your show that you watched? The big tech?
And I can show you that if we look at it here, so right here is the airbag part, and we'll pull This is one of my cohort's packs, but so this is the airbag that opens up, or that blows up into a balloon. It actually, this is like Velcroed together, and there's a little zipper that releases here. And you can see there is a canister of compressed air right here. It's got a little gauge on it that shows you how much air is in it, and it's all connected to this quick release handle that's tucked into the shoulder strap. And if you're in avalanche terrain, you would pull this out and pull it like that, and then to deploy your airbag, you would yank on that handle, and it makes this balloon blow up kind of above and behind your head.
And you do that at the point where you know you're not going to outrun it and it's snow starting to cover you? Is that
you do that if you actually get caught and are getting carried down the hill.
What do you bring?
There's some really important stuff that you should have if you're going to go out into the backcountry. And the first thing is what's called an avalanche transceiver. So this is a radio kind of device, or a wireless device, and you wear this while you're out there skiing. And when we turn it on, so this thing does two things. It transmits a signal when it's on send, and it receives a signal when it's on search, but it doesn't do them both at the same time. It only does one or the other. So it's important that you would have one on and that all your partners would have one on. You can't just have one because you need somebody to look for you. So right now this one's on this one's on send or transmit, and you would put it back in its little holster, and you're meant to wear it inside your outermost layer of clothing. But for this little demonstration, we'll just put it around your head, and you put your arm through there. Yep, and then you would put this around your waist. It's going to look a little big on you. All right? So you'd wear it like this while you're out. If you were skiing and we were partners and you got buried and I couldn't see you in the snow anywhere, I could find you by using my transceiver. And if you stand over by the couch, I'll put this one on search and I'll show you how it works. So when I turn this to search, it's going to give me a little signal. It's going to tell me to follow the arrow and start looking for you. And it's actually going to lead me more or less right to you. It makes a little noise, and as I get closer, it starts screaming at me, and it tells me that I'm that much closer, and the closer I get, the louder and faster it beeps.
That's good. So
this is a tool you would use to find out where the person is buried, and it's not just as simple as what I did in here, but it's pretty, it requires some practice and instruction.
Yeah.
So I just switched it back to search, but you would use this to initially figure out where you think the person is buried. Once you figure out where you think the person is buried, you would use what's called a probe. And this is a lot like a tent pole, okay?
Yeah.
And to assemble it, we're going to toss it out like that, and we're going to pull on the one end until it becomes a big rigid pole.
Uh-huh.
And then,
If you poke it down to try to find it.
yep, I'm just going to do the top here. So then, once you searched with your avalanche transceiver, you would take this and you'd start poking into the snow where you thought the person was buried, trying to see if you hit them. And you start in the center of where you think it is, and then you're going to start going in ever widening what's called a concentric circle about every 10 centimeters. You're going to make the circle 10 centimeters bigger each time, and you're going to make each poke into the snow 10 centimeters apart from the other one. And you're going to keep going like that until you think you hit them. Once you think you hit them, you're going to leave that poked into the snow. Hold that. That's going to be you. All right. Then you have to have a shovel. Because if you don't have a shovel, you're not going to be able to dig them out. So you put your shovel together, and a good shovel has an extendable handle like this and a nice metal blade. And then I would start digging the snow out and away from you to try and find you. Because you're my buddy, and I want to get you out of the snow.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
these are the probably 3 most important pieces of equipment if you're going to be out in the backcountry.